Poland gave Ukraine more crabs than it kept for itself. Nearly 54 units, brand new, straight off the production line. And that was no act of charity. In this video, you'll find out what Polish weapons are fighting in Ukraine and how they've performed in real combat, what the fighters themselves think about them, no sugarcoating, and most importantly, how a little-known arms-producing country turned someone else's war into a ticket onto the world stage. Let's start with the main weapon of this story, the Polish self-propelled howitzer, the Krab.
The most was 18 quick ones we worked through.
How did Poland create its own NATO standard SPGs? And how did they give Ukraine most of the units they had? What about the Krabs impressed the Ukrainian artillerymen the most?
The electronics here? Honestly, words fail me. It's the best there is.
But what spoils the idyllic picture and could put the crew in danger?
There are some slight nuances to it.
What other weapons did Poland use to strengthen the Ukrainian military? From armored vehicles to SAMs. And why is this profitable for the Poles themselves? The Polish Krab SPGs have been destroying Russian invaders in Ukraine since the beginning of summer 2022.
Mostly it's manpower we deal with, advancing infantry. Tanks happen too. Our commanders said we targeting Soviet Piorun, but then they said it was a North Korean Koksen.
Why did Ukraine need help specifically with artillery so badly? The Ukrainian military had many artillery systems in service produced back in Soviet times. Most of them were already obsolete. But most importantly, the shells for Soviet calibers were running out. The Poles were among the first to come to the rescue. Did Poland have a surplus of artillery systems? Not at all. The Krab SPGs were a brand new model of weaponry, and their serial production had only just begun. Nevertheless, the Polish government handed over 3 batteries to Ukraine at once. A total of 18 units. If you approve of the generosity of the Polish leadership, hit the like button. So what exactly is the Krab self-propelled artillery unit? After a long search, the Polish military chose a kind of hybrid, with a turret from the British AS-90 SPGs and a chassis from the South Korean K9. Does this mean the Krab isn't a Polish weapon? Not at all. The Poles localized the production of many components at their own defense plants. Furthermore, they added plenty of new things, their own fire control system, navigation system, and other vital internals. Did this make life easier for the artillerymen? You bet.
It's equipped with the Topaz system, which means minimal human intervention. A senior battery officer or commander enters the target on the vehicle's computer, and it's all automatically transmitted to the guns he selected for the task. We arrived, the vehicle determined its own position and coordinates. I sent the point, and I can already work from this firing position in different directions, since the turret rotates 360 degrees.
How does this automation affect combat work? First, it radically reduces the time needed to prepare for opening fire.
If the system is running and the weather conditions are normal, literally 1 to 2 minutes. Back in the day, on Soviet systems, there would be this huge book called the firing table. To make a shot, we'd sit and calculate for 5 or 10 minutes how to finally fire, and then we'd still be correcting that fire because you can't just eyeball it. You blast it in that direction, and then wait to see where the burst is. These systems are easier. They're more automated. They calculate everything automatically. They already have firing tables for every type of munition built in, and so the machine does it itself.
Of course, the machine is far from doing everything alone. But compared to Soviet-style self-propelled artillery, the capabilities of the Krabs are simply fantastic. Onboard computers calculate the necessary parameters in a matter of seconds.
It will show me whether we can reach with this shell, and it'll tell me which powder charge to use. I send the coordinates to the gunner's computer, and he uses those coordinates to lay onto the target.
Ease of calculation is fine. But what about the result? Standard unguided shells aren't even theoretically designed for first shot hits. In practice, they rarely hit on the second shot either. But not the Krab. Ukrainian artillerymen describe it as an exceptionally accurate weapon.
One shell lands 15 to 20 meters from the target, the second shell, dead on. This applies to any of them. American, European, and the Polish ones really pleased us. One shell, one hit.
Meanwhile, the actual service life of the gun barrel, which is usually the weak link in artillery systems, on the Krabs significantly exceeds the manufacturer's stated specs.
The round counts in my vehicles, already exceed what the Poles told us, which was 2,500 shots. We're already at 4,000 shots, and the vehicles are still firing. The vehicles are still hitting.
Well, what about comfort? Soviet military hardware was never known for being user-friendly. On the contrary, you got the impression it was designed with the intent of making a soldier's already difficult life even harder. That made the contrast of the Krabs even sharper for the Ukrainians.
Everything here is simple, and it's all made for people.
If you want to know more about the differences between Western military tech and the Russian stuff, subscribe to our channel. First off, the loading system makes life a whole lot easier.
Before, we used to ram the shells manually. Now there's an autoloader. Everything works automatically.
Second, there's the space, which is catastrophically lacking in Soviet-Russian counterparts.
What really struck me was how much room there is inside. There's space to move, space for the crew to turn around, space to store things. Everything is made for people.
And to top it off, the nice little things that civilized people are used to.
An electric kettle, heating, cabin ventilation, air conditioning.
But does the Krab have any downsides? It must. This isn't a fairy tale. Some Ukrainian servicemen complain about the vehicle's chassis.
Its chassis is a bit weak. It's really afraid of mud because it's heavy and gets bogged down. And it's afraid of sand. It throws its tracks.
Others, on the contrary, speak about the incredible reliability of the chassis itself.
It performs brilliantly in battle. It has saved us many times already. Extremely accurate, reliable, especially the suspension system.
And in general, new tech is always better than stuff born in the last millennium.
Everything works. Nothing is broken. It drives. It doesn't stall.
But how much has Polish artillery actually influenced the course of the fighting in Ukraine? Was it just a drop in the ocean? According to open sources, as of 2025, Ukraine had about 40 Krab SPGs in its arsenal. Almost as many were lost in battles with the Russian occupiers. It turns out Poland gave Ukraine more Krabs than it kept for itself. Currently, there are 26 such SPGs known to be in service with the Polish military. And that's far from everything Warsaw has done to support Kiev. Can you fight with guns alone? Maybe, but no one has ever managed to pull it off. Heavy artillery works from the depth, from the near rear. But what about the infantry on the very zero line? They also need fire support, mobile and flexible. Besides tanks, this task is usually handled by IFVs and other light armor. Why are the Polish Rosomak armored vehicles usually called APCs? Because they are wheeled. And there's a stereotype that an IFV has to be on tracks. If you also disagree with that classification, let us know in the comments. In reality, the difference is defined by the armament, and the Rosomaks carry the classic kit for an IFV, a 30mm automatic cannon, a machine gun, and an ATGM system. Does this vehicle look familiar to some of you? You're right. It's a licensed copy of the Finnish Patria, with production localized in Poland. They built them for themselves, and now they're building them for Ukraine too. How many have been made so far? Currently, it's known that the AFUs has up to 100 of these IFVs. Specifically, within the 44th Mechanized Brigade of the Ground Forces. How do they differ from the Soviet armor once familiar to the Ukrainian military? In almost every way. Compared to the old BMP-1s and BMP-2s, which were dubbed mass graves for infantry back during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, this is pure luxury.
Сів, коробка
You
автомат,
sit down here, automatic transmission, air conditioning, and just go, go, go.
є все.
Everything is here. But Soviet tech, there's nothing there. It starts with, you didn't switch that right, you didn't press this hard enough. None of that here. Here, you just step on it and drive. The computer does all the thinking.
Все.
Everything here is already made for people. Electronic aiming systems, laser rangefinders, the whole 9 yards. So you can see the results of direct hits from this equipment. I think we need more of this equipment, of course.
The class of armored fighting vehicles in the modern world is very broad. What niche does the Polish Rosomak occupy among its many counterparts? It's not as well armored as the American Bradleys, but it's just as well armed and even faster. Plus, it's lighter and can swim. But the Ukrainian military didn't really like the rear doors. They consider a ramp that lowers down to act as a kind of bridge to be the optimal choice for quick infantry disembarkation. But here, for some reason, the developer chose doors, and not very convenient ones at that.
At first, it took us a couple of days just to learn how to open these doors. It's not as simple as it looks.
But can you forgive this minor inconvenience for the vehicle's insane firepower? The 30mm caliber of the cannon is hard to compare to something like the Krab, of course. But at a distance of 1 to 2 kilometers, it creates a literal storm of fire.
The cannon is gorgeous. High rate of fire, fast. From inside the turret, for me, it's quiet. From the outside, not so much. Like, we jumped out at night, did our job, disassembled a small house or some group, and peeled out fast. It's quick. The cannon has a high rate of fire, 200 rounds per minute. We did our work, and they didn't even understand what was hitting them or where it came from.
The Rosomak, like the Patria, is a platform for various types of equipment. What does that mean? Depending on what weapons you mount, you can get an IFVs, an APCs, or a command and staff vehicle, or the self-propelled 120mm rack mortar created by Polish designers. This weapon has also had its baptism by fire in Ukraine. How do self-propelled mortars differ from traditional ones? Besides the striking visual differences, it's about speed, mobility, armored protection for the crew, and, again, modern electronics. And the Polish racks fire almost twice as far, up to 12 kilometers.
It covers the area very well, takes out infantry effectively, and it's also great at punching through buildings where they hide, right where they keep all their ammo.
In reality, it's not your usual mortar anymore, but rather a type of self-propelled artillery. But how much of a chance for success do even the most modern guns, tanks, and armored vehicles have without protection from aerial attacks? The war in Ukraine proves the modern battlefield is seen through and through by drones. They are practically the primary means of destruction. And then there are helicopters, planes, and missiles. How do you defend yourself? One of the most effective ways to counter aerial threats remains MANPADS. Where does the Polish Piorun MANPADS originate? It's a deep modernization of the Soviet Igla. The Polish government began handing these over to Ukraine even before Russia's full-scale invasion started.
There was the Igla one. In terms of shape, it looks like the old model, but our Polish partners reworked the entire, you could say, innards, and that improved the firing range and the quality of the shot. Our units handled them just fine. Since they are similar to Soviet models, it didn't take much time to learn how to use them.
What makes the Piorun better than the rest? It's got some outstanding specs for range and engagement altitude. 6.5 kilometers and 5 kilometers respectively. It also sports a highly sensitive infrared seeker. Because of that, it's every bit as good as the famous American Stinger. In fact, in some areas, it even outperforms it. How has the Piorun distinguished itself in Ukraine? Alongside many other MANPADS, it's become a deadly effective tool for taking down Russian jets, choppers, cruise missiles, and the notorious Shaheds. But most importantly, It fully lived up to the exceptional combat specs claimed by the manufacturer. As a result, it's become a bestseller on the global arms market. After the World Defense Show 2026 in Saudi Arabia, the Poles even bragged that their Piorun outclasses the Russian Verba and the Chinese QW-12. Thanks to the combat capabilities proven in Ukraine, Piorun MANPADS are already being snapped up by Belgium, Sweden, Estonia, Latvia, Norway, Slovakia, and Moldova. Even France, which has its own Mistral MANPADS, wants to buy the Piorun, both for itself and for Ukraine. So, what's the bottom line? It's a bit of a paradox. For until recently obscure arms manufacturers like the Poles, helping Ukraine turned out to be very good for business. After all, testing your gear in real-world combat conditions opens a wide door to the global market. Stay safe and support Ukraine.